Hello viewers, I welcome you all for the video lecture in Java method overloading. Method overloading meaning when we have two functions of the same name. For example, add, that can be allowed in Java language, but we need to pass the arguments differently. Differently means the number of arguments passed should be different, or either the data types of the arguments passed should be different. For example, if I'm adding two numbers, if I'm passing the arguments as int a comma int b, then if I'm having a function add, if I'm using that in that program, then I have to have the data type float a comma float b. Here I have changed the data type. Thus I'm showing difference in these two functions to the compiler differently, so that whenever the function we call, that particular block of code will get invoked. Yes, so in order to differentiate between the functions having the same name, we have to pass the arguments differently. Like it may be the number of arguments that we are passing should be different, or either the data types that we are going to pass as the arguments should be different. Yes, and the method overloading is not associated with the return type. It is not going to do with the written type of the function, so it can be anything. Yes, it may be different between the two functions, or it may be the same. So the concept method overloading meaning the function name for two functions may be the same, but the number of arguments passed should be different, or either the data type of the arguments passed should be different. Yes, so let's explore. Methods have the same name but differ in the parameters. The parameters may differ by the different number of arguments passed or the different data types with the parameters or both. Say suppose we have add as a function. Yes, we have given two arguments to compute two addition of two numbers, and another function add the same name, but here I need to compute the sum of three numbers taken int a comma int b comma int c. In the previous one we have add int a comma int b, so here the function name is add, the same one, but the arguments passed are different, so the compiler differentiates it and the function call pass it accordingly, will be passed accordingly. So here this thing, that is, you can have the difference in the number of arguments passed, or either you can show difference in the data type. Yes, and then these methods, for example this add is called overloading methods, and this feature is called method overloading. And the method overloading is explained with an example. Here you see we have func as the method name. The same method name can be used for various function blocks, but here we have differentiated each methods by parsing different arguments. In the first function we have no arguments passed. In the second function we have int a. In the third function double a. So here we have one argument passed as the previous one int a, but here we have difference in the data type, which the compiler makes the difference and passes its function call accordingly. Yes, so we have another function int a comma float b. Here we have two arguments So the method overloading is not associated with the return type of the functions. So we have void, float. For these functions, it will never consider that. It may be anything, but the method overloading, the compiler will never take into account those things. Here the function method is overloaded, so these methods have the same name but accept different arguments. And to the note we have the return types of the above methods are not the same. It is because the method overloading is not associated with the return types, and overloaded methods may have the same or different return types. Yes, but they must differ in the parameters because the compiler will check for the parameters in order to differentiate the functions falling under the same name. Why method overloading? Method overloading, suppose you have 15 functions in a program. You need to create 15 function name instead using the same function name. But if suppose the functions of the 15 are going to accept different number of arguments or different types of data type, then you can able to use the same function name and you can able to differentiate, make difference and understand the compiler in that way. If you could not able to pass the arguments as differently, you have to at that moment you have to use a different function name. Yes. So here a simple example to compute addition of two numbers and addition of three numbers. So the arguments will vary in there. In this case, int a comma int b for the first case and int a comma int b comma c for the second case we will be passing as input arguments. So this increases the readability of the program and maintainability of the program, and method overloading concept is there, so you can use same function name by passing different arguments. Here you look in this program we have already discussed. This function method is overloaded, so this method is called overloaded method, and this concept is called overloading, and these methods have the same name but accept different arguments. So same name, different arguments. And how to perform method overloading in Java using an example program we have explained here. So two types: overloading by changing the number of parameters, and then another type is data type has to be changed. So first let's just discuss this program. In this program we have the function class definition, class name, method overloading is the class name, and then the display function which prints arguments and then variable a, and another function display which accepts two parameters here, int a comma int b, and here we are going to print two values a and b, and those integer values are passed during the function call, that is the actual parameters. This is the formal parameters. So the function can be called by using the function name, that is the method name is display. You have to pass 1 to call this integer a, display integer a. So let's see, we have the main function and then we have called the function display int a by passing 1. So this will invoke this block of code by calling this function display int a, and this gets executed and prints this, and then after the block ends, so it comes to the next line of this display 1, and this display 1 comma 4 will invoke by calling the function display int a comma int b, since the input actual parameters has 2 arguments, so it identifies this to get executed, and this statement, only a single statement is there, so this statement gets executed and prints this. So end of the program. So we have these 2 statements printed in the output screen. And the second one, by changing the data type of the parameters. Yes, we have here a class, method overloading, and then 2 functions. But here we have show difference in the data type. Here we have one argument passed for both the functions, but the data type is different. So in the main function we have display1, which will invoke this display int a, because 1 is integer value, which will invoke this function statements. So block of code will get executed in that way, and then display hello will call this function display the string a and gets its code executed. Yes, so we have in the output screen got integer data and got string object. So important points with method overloading is 2 or more methods can have the same name. And the line, if there is, we can make a difference in the arguments, then we can use the same name. Otherwise we need to use differently. And then method overloading is achieved by either changing the number of arguments or changing the data type, or both the number of arguments, and then you can change the data type also. And then it is not something associated with the return type of the function, it is the method name, so you please avoid that. And then coming to the end of the session, hope you enjoy the video lecture, and let's discuss another topic in another video. Thank you all.